Hi, my dear Astro family. So today we are going to be looking at Mars going direct. I think we are all happy about it. I think we all had a bit of a energy lacking, right? And then hopefully this Mars going direct is going to be giving us a lot more strength coming up. However, it's going to be remaining in the sign of Cancer for a while. So unfortunately, maybe it's going to take a little bit more time, to kind of get back into our old self. But the good news is that finally it's going to be happening. So that's what we are going to be looking at today. But before we do that, I just want to mention that you have got a few days left to sign up on my vocational course that is coming up very soon in about 5 days. It's going to be a longer one, 20 weeks. And yes, we are going to be looking at basically a lot of outer planets impact on your vocational houses, how you can work best with them. But we are also going to be kind of like doing a lot of vocational profiling. Now, I made courses before on vocational astrology, but this is not going to be the same. This is more a complementary material towards the other courses. But if you haven't taken those, not to worry at all, because this is not based on that. You don't need so much of that knowledge. I'm going to be building up kind of from a mid-beginner point of view towards going up to a little bit of a higher levels as well. But you do need to understand what planets, signs, and houses are about. So just bear that in mind. This is not a full beginner course, but definitely it can give you a lot of knowledge of vocational profiling. And on that note, I would like to thank you because many of you bought my new book, which is about spotting your financial talents through your chart, but it is still available actually for purchase on my website, AstroViktor.com. So if you are interested and you want to be doing a bit of a profiling about your financial situation, then this is the book to go for. And it will come with a webinar. You have got a choice to pick just the book or with a video recording. And I'm going to be basically showing you an example how to kind of do a vocational profile with the help of my book. So that's coming up, I think, on the 1st of March, that webinar. So it's, I think, additional $5 if you buy that on top of the book. So, but let's get going with this Mars going direct, because I think, as I said earlier, we are all pretty happy about that. So first of all, Mars went retrograde around the 6th or 7th of December 2024. And Mars has got debilitation going on in the sign of Cancer. So we have got pretty much the stationary movement happening of Mars on the 24th of February 2025. And remember that Mars has been having this ongoing opposition to Pluto. Now, because we are talking about a retrograde motion here to start with, a retrograde often indicates that we have to be reviewing something in our life. So you had to be reviewing two parts of your chart, actually. One was Leo, and the other one is Cancer. Mars spent most of the time, or has spent most of its time, in the sign of Cancer. So it went retrograde on 6th degree of Leo, and then now turning stationary direct on 17th degree of Cancer. And it's very interesting that retrogression is always about going back to the roots, and actually the sign of Cancer represents the roots as well. So we pretty much had to be looking at where we came from. We had to be looking at our insecurities. Now, when we are talking about retrogression, which actually comes from the Latin word backwards, it actually doesn't happen in the real life. So planets do not go backwards. But from a Earth perspective, the view, how we are kind of like looking at the sky, it looks like actually that the planet is moving backwards. So that's what retrogression actually means. And just think about retrogression as kind of like revisiting, redoing something, and so on. So we had to be revisiting something to do with our emotional well-being, but also we had to be revisiting our own roots and somehow the fundamentals. So retrogression always gives us the chance to often actually relive certain type of past events as well in our life, to do certain type of reflect reflecting on something. So maybe we had to be looking at what we were taught by our parents. Maybe we had to be reliving the past as well, because Cancer does represent the past. With retrogression, you have to be reassessing something. So we have to be reassessing Mars themes in our lives. So Mars rules two parts of your chart. That could be the Aries and the Scorpionic part. So for example, for me, Aries rules the second house. So I had to be revisiting something to do with my finances. So whether I'm managing the finances well, whether my expenditure is a little bit more fiery, or maybe that, yeah, I'm spending money like there is no tomorrow. So Mars went retrograde, as said earlier, on the 6th or the 7th of December 2024. Mars retrograde lasts for approximately about 78 days, so a good 10 weeks altogether. And if you have got any planet around, I mean, especially around the 17th degree of Cancer or 6th degree of Leo, and the crosses as well. So 17 degree Cancer, 17 degree Aries, 17 degree Libra, or 17 degree of Capricorn, then this was something that truly affected you on a personal level. And as earlier mentioned, Mars has got this ongoing opposition going on with Pluto, and Pluto is pretty much an invitation to find our inner courage. This is talking to us about having to find the willpower to make changes in our life, because Pluto is still in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius would represent anything to do with innovation in our lives. So it looks like that we all had to go through a very deep transformational kind of like change. And, you know, because Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, and that is about modernizing something, that is about throwing something out that is outdated. So it also looks like that this deep transformation came with a lot of having to have closure as well in our lives. Now, always, Mars is a very interesting planet, because Mars is the very first personal planet that has got the ability to oppose the sun. So we've got the conjunction, and then basically imagine that we've got the young prince who is going to be leaving the kingdom and tries its own luck, because there is the adrenaline rush going on there. And then once I get to that opposition part, what happens is that I go backwards. So I might go back to the kingdom because I lived my life. So Mars somehow represents a little bit of your, let's call it as the hero's journey. Okay. And you go and then you try out new things. You might make mistakes, and that is okay. So even this Mars retrograde could have talked to you about going back to your family, to kind of examine something there where certain type of things are originated from. And let's be frank, we all have got our insecurities, we all have got our own vulnerabilities, and sometimes we're going to have to face them. And the Pluto Mars opposition would pretty much talk to you about having to face certain type of fears in our life. So that would be a little bit of an initial thought about what is going on with Mars going direct. But surely, if you have acknowledged that you have got things that you want to be making change about or around in your life, then this Mars is going to push you to move now forward. It's not going to be an easy ride. I'm going to be honest, because Mars is still having an opposition. It will be having an opposition to Pluto. So further transformation and further discoveries are made within your psyche. Aquarius is very much about intellect. So therefore, we're going to have to be digging up a lot more stuff. And maybe it's buried with Pluto. But making those discoveries is going to set you free. And that would be the whole idea of the Aquarius sign. Now, another topic that could have popped up here is that you feel controlled. So maybe it's the you are feeling controlled by your family or by the country where you live. By the way, Aquarius Pluto often talks to us about political matters as well. So this could pretty much indicate that you feel kind of like a little bit overwhelmed by all the political decisions and so forth that are happening in the world. But on a personal level, this could really talk to you about that you try to control your own emotions. It can feel like that you have to be, or you have to put your pride aside, and then I'm not allowed to cry. I'm not allowed to be emotional. I'm not allowed to be expressing my kind of like frustration. And this Mars wanted you to actually tap into that anger and then transform the anger into something which is going to be making you achieve something in life. Mars is a selfish type of archetype, so we had to be selfish. This is about the protection of your home. This is about the protection of your roots and the protection of your, in a way, your loved ones, rather than kind of like focusing on what is going on in the collective world and so forth, and kind of like being consumed by all the drama. I'm just going to be focusing on the self. And this is going to be echoed, by the way, with the Venus retrograde as well, which is happening in the sign of Aries. It's going to be happening at the end of this week, but I'm going to be making a separate video about that, because Venus in the sign of Aries would represent something to do with having to love yourself. So control issue could have been a major topic also coming up with this Pluto-Mars opposition. And maybe what could also have happened, that it felt like that you had tried different type of things and then it didn't work. So often actually that Pluto in Aquarius says that now it's time to actually approach this matter, approach your accomplishments and your goals in a completely different way. And Cancer is quite an intuitive sign because it is a water sign. And just think about how much water we've got currently in the sky, right? So we've got Neptune, North Node, the Sun, we've got Ceres there, we've got Mercury there. Venus is going to be shifting back around the 27th of March, back into the sign of Pisces as well. So a lot of water there. And sometimes it says to us that we need to be able to go with the flow. We need to be able to listen to our intuition. But what we might need to be very mindful about is that we can get overwhelmed. We can get super sensitive, and feelings can make us angry. So the angriness is very much coming from Mars as well, because I would call Mars as a trigger point of our chart. So our whatever kind of like it's an instinctual response that we've got when there is kind of like a danger zone happening in our lives. And then with Mars in Cancer, you react in a very emotional way. So it could represent an emotional outburst. We can call Mars in Cancer as kind of like the mama act, like a mama tiger, a mama bear type of archetype. So imagine that you feel like that someone is threatening your child. Excuse me. Then you are going to be kind of like, fist to fist type of energy. That's what Mars can do in the sign of Cancer. And often our approach is not that rational. So that's where Pluto comes into the picture in the sign of Aquarius, which is an intellectual sign that we need to be able to be rational about it. Also, when you think about that Pluto is disposed by Saturn, you will be able to see on the chart that actually we do have got a Saturn and Mercury conjunction happening almost at the same time when Mars goes stationary direct. And Saturn and Mercury archetype is about common sense, seeing things clearly, even trying to see things clearly, which seems to be kind of impossible because it's the sign of Pisces. So while Mars is something to do with our will, your willpower, Pluto is the collective willpower. So this would represent somehow having to kind of come together also with others and then kind of like move that mountain you know, it's kind of like with Mars in Cancer. Sometimes we're going to have to gather the family members and then we can accomplish something together a lot quicker and a lot easier as well, rather than trying to do something always on our own. But it is still a reminder that at the end of the day, I have to be able to count on myself. And when it comes to a danger, I have to be able to protect myself. Now, the other message is with Mars in Cancer, remember when you are, you know, you're flying, for example, with an airplane, it is actually emphasized that put your own mask first on and then help others. So that's a Mars in Cancer type of archetype, because by not putting the mask on first, you might be risking other people's life as well. So that's where that kind of like selfishness, I would say, is important, but I'm still going to be taking into account other people's will and kind of like desire as well. I would also say, because we've got a opposition happening between Mars and Pluto, and Mars and Pluto would talk to us about projection. Typically, an opposition represents like something that we project onto others. So you might want to be looking at how your own insecurities are projected onto others, or how much you feel that friends and groups of people who are really insecure in their own skin projecting something onto you, and then maybe you feel like that it's smothering or it's swallowing you up somehow. Either way, what we have to be looking at with this Mars in Cancer is how strong you are. And depending on your house position, maybe if it is happening in your sixth house, you need to be strengthening your immune system. You need to actually build physical strength. You're going to have to go back to the gym and all those type of things. And because Pluto is involved, I would say it looks like all of us have to adapt. All of us have to maybe even realize that we are stronger together as a community when we are on the same page. So Pluto always represents where our kind of like power is. And it looks like that the power is actually coming from the support of others. An opposition could represent codependency also. So how much you are kind of like dependent on validation. This validation is going to be also a major topic coming up with Venus retrograde in the sign of Aries. Because Venus wants to hear, I'm pretty. But Aries says, hold on a minute, you need to be able to tell yourself that you are pretty. And then after, others are going to come up and actually notice about you. You know, in the fitness industry, for example, they say that the first month you are going to see the changes within you. The second month, your family members are going to notice that you've lost weight. And then the third month, everyone is going to kind of ask you, what did you do? How did you do that? Because everyone else is going to notice the changes within yourself. So therefore, this Pluto-Mars opposition highly recommends that the changes must be initiated by you, and you have to be noticing that the changes are necessary. And you have to be kind of like, in a way, praising yourself rather than, you know, I'm starting a diet and the next day I'm expecting others to kind of see that it has happened already. Okay. So I feel like Mars and Pluto opposition are highly difficult though. But definitely if we use Pluto as a catalyst, then actually Pluto, which represents wealth and stamina, then it leads to certain type of growth. And rather than maybe you have kind of got into the same power struggles, the same kind of like issues all over again. So this could really talk to you about getting stuck. Now, in this chart, I've also noticed that on the very same day when Mars goes stationary direct, Pluto is actually making a conjunction to Pallas Athene. So Pallas Athene is about strategy. So this is about a winning mindset. Often this is all or nothing. I'm going to be winning at all costs. And Mars kind of like gets fueled by this energy. With Pluto and Pallas Athene, I would say what is highly important here is that you have got your game plan. And in the political world, we will see some major political moves coming up, which we already see. anyway, or we already have seen in the last couple of weeks, right? But it really looks to me that there is going to be more. And I can imagine that, new kind of alliances are coming up, for example, connected to trading and so on. Uh, yes, kind of like trying to push back a little bit on certain type of power struggles with current alliances. I could really kind of imagine that. So definitely you need to be looking at how you are projecting things onto others. With Mars, typically, as mentioned earlier, it represents anger. Imagine this, that kind of like the blood is, kind of like we say it in my language that um, the knife is like opening up in your own pockets. Pretty much, that's what we say in my language. So it's kind of like the 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 the, the blood is boiling, right? So what makes you really frustrated? What makes you really angry? And how you can tap into that anger so that you can actually accomplish something with it. So I think this would be, generally speaking, the Mars energy, which I think it's really powerful. So I want to give you some. Oh, I've given you the key dates already, so we don't need to be kind of like looking at that again. Maybe another thing I would be kind of like do if I were you, I would be reviewing what has been going on in your life, probably from about mid-September onwards, when Mars, the very first time, went into the sign of Cancer, or at least revisit your life connected to that December, January month, especially the last 10 weeks, what you have done, because that's exactly where you kind of can move forward from. And I mentioned this Pallas Athene and Pluto conjunction. Pallas Athene also is that energy or representation of pattern recognition. So it looks like that you have to be doing a lot of kind of like subconscious patterns, kind of like readings with that Mars. And Mars can represent removal. Sometimes you're going to have to cut ties with something, and in the sign of Cancer, yes, we're going to have to let go of certain type of family members in our lives, because it can feel like that they are holding us back, belittling us, or treating us like a little child. Remember that Mars, as I mentioned earlier, this is the hero's journey. So it's kind of like you would like to move forward, but the family is actually holding you back. Or maybe you are very kind of like a patriot. Mars in Cancer can represent patriotism. So maybe the reason why you don't want to move forward, let's say relocate, if it's happening in your ninth house, because you have got this like love towards your own country. And don't get me wrong, if you do so, that's great. But this Mars retrograde could have been an indication for you that you have to be looking out for yourself, and maybe you have to be looking for opportunities somewhere else. Mars can also represent having to remove certain type of obstacles from your life also. Now, why am I talking about obstacles? On one hand, because the tightest aspect Mars is actually making on that 17 degree is a trine to Mercury, who is making a conjunction to Saturn. So I want to talk about that as well a little bit more. So Mercury and Saturn mentioned earlier that it talks to you about common sense, but also it could talk to you about the fear of talking, the fear of speaking up about, let's say, your emotions, your dreams, your something that you are yearning for. And Mars would like you to have the courage pretty much to assert yourself, as well as to speak up about your own dreams. This with Saturn and Mars conjunction, it also could talk to you about that you have to be somehow making your imagination like something that you are like imagining, thinking about crystal clear. You have to be somehow creating a plan around it, and then moving forward with the plan, of course, because Mars is a retrograde. Now, it is highly possible, though, that the reason why uh, we because Saturn is telling us that we need to be a little bit more on the cautious side. So maybe you don't want to be moving forward immediately just because you have been burned before. And that's also a Mars archetype. You kind of cut your fingers and so forth. So I'm actually a little bit scared. But Mercury and Saturn um, combination could talk to you about a formal kind of like agreement as well. This is one of the reasons why I believe that it's highly possible that there are going to be new alliances coming up, formal agreements, let's say between countries, but it also can talk to you about that, yes, um, you would like to make a formal kind of like agreement with your boss, let's say if it's connected to your 10th house, about, what is the future of your role within the company. Where does the future come from? It's coming from North Node. North Node is also in the sign of Pisces as well. But at the same time that Saturn and Mercury conjunction, we have to see things clearly when it comes to false statement or something that is kind of like maybe a little bit on the shady side, Pisces, or something that is hidden, right? Or something that is kind of like avoiding to give you the answer. And then I keep asking the same questions so that I can get the right answer finally. And then Mars is telling us that we need to be pushing through so that the right answer could be actually kind of found somehow. Now we've got the Saturn Mercury conjunction. That's the start of something new. So that is about seeing through the illusions, the lies, the subconscious fears, or confusing situation. And Mars says, I am tired of this confusing blah blah here. I need to see things clearly. And you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of it. The bottom actually comes from Cancer, which is very much about the roots of the tree, right? So the roots are all underneath the ground. And in order for you to see them, you're going to have to kind of do a bit of a digging around it, right? But I also would like to mention that we've got the Pluto Saturn conjunction, which is actually being squared by Juno in the sign of Sagittarius. And Juno is about contractual agreements. So on one hand, it really feels like that what happens in the world is that there are certain type of contractual agreements being made, but behind the scenes. Behind the scenes comes from a lot of water energy as well as Pluto. And Sagittarius could actually represent trading, but the trading belongs to Gemini more. But of course, we're talking about the Gemini and Sagittarius axis. So overall, that would talk to us about selling and buying as well. Of course, on a personal level, series is about the style of nurturing, and Juno will talk to us about partnership. So there could be a bit of a crisis situation here, how much I feel that I'm getting nurtured by my family, I'm getting the support, or people that I live together with, or even it could represent the committed partnership as well. But on a global level, it would talk to us about certain type of contractual agreement, which might be serving one's needs more than the others, though. And this Juno and Ceres square will talk to us about having to have mutual benefits. So it really looks to me that contractual agreements are being made to benefit from something, but to knock certain type of power down. When we have got a lot of water in our chart, there is always kind of like a lot of like snow and fluidity going on. Therefore, it can become quite slippery. So making a mistake is actually highly possible with this combination. And again, I feel like the Saturn and Mercury conjunction actually does remind us that we need to be a little bit more calculative about it. And maybe what also can be popping up is that we do something shady or we do something unethical with this. I would also call with this Pluto and Mercury and Saturn type of combination as the ultimate truth. Like it really looks like that we cannot deny that there is a truth out there. We cannot deny that the roots do matter, where we come from. I also look at Mars often, and this is something that I'm going to be mentioning in the vocational course, is that Mars often represents a way of how to make money. Excuse me, but I do have flu still going on. Actually, it went away for a week or so, and then it started coming back. I believe there is a virus going on. I've heard about it. So, maybe I'm a victim of that. And talking about that victim mindset, that's very much of a Piscean type of energy. And we can be the victim of lies and betrayals and so forth. So that's another topic that might come up here. And then how much does that affect me on an emotional level? So, but I wanted to a little bit of reflect more on the Juno series square. A square is always a crisis situation. And series represents growth though. So on a personal level, it could feel like that I would like my relationship to grow because somehow that attachment that we had previously might not be there anymore. So therefore, the Mars going forward may be giving you the courage to speak up about these feelings or to make certain type of changes as well in your life. The last thing that I wanted to mention to you today is actually Mars going very close by, stationed direct on an asteroid called Panacea. So if you want to be looking up where Panacea is in your chart, its astrological number is 2878. And Panacea was the daughter of Asclepius, who was the Greek god of healing. And she assisted him in his work. By the way, Asclepius had 7 children, 4 daughters, and 3 sons. Hygeia was one of her sister, by the way. So Panacea is a representation of medicines and cures. So also this would be an asteroid of remedies, or sometimes it's about a representation of quick fixes in our lives. So the danger of what Panacea might be telling us is that we can come up with a quick solution, but in the long run, Pluto in Aquarius, it might not be working. Of course, this could bring up the topic of like medical kind of like crisis situation that might be popping up in the next few months. So this is also one of the reasons why I mentioned that there is a virus going on. And this could be kind of like peaking a little bit later on once the Pluto-Mars opposition are going to be a little bit closer. So we might be seeing something around healthcare, pharmaceutical companies. Maybe something is going to get revealed there. Obviously, recently WHO was a big topic in US. So let's see what is going to be kind of like a topic there. But with Pluto and Mars, even illegal and legal type of drugs and so forth could be popping up here. And Panacea can represent unconventional healing also. But from a kind of like a problem or situation point of view, Panacea would talk to us about an easy fix or something that I'm kind of like looking for a simplified, uncomplicated kind of like solution to a problem. And this is what we have to be able to come up with a plan for. Okay, so guys, this is the general overview of this upcoming Mars going stationary direct. I hope this video has helped you. And then now I'm going to be just giving you a very brief breakdown for all 12 signs. Okay, so let's have a look at the 12 signs. Let's start with Aries rising sign. So Mars is going direct in your 4th house, but it started this journey in the 5th house. So it started in the 5th house, which is kind of like a little bit about creativity, and maybe you had to be examining something to do with your romantic life, your love life, basically, and maybe going back to the roots, to the home, to the family life, to your emotional security, why you might not be able to kind of like form better romantic connections. Now, but the fourth house is the focal point for us, and the Mercury retrograde or stationary direct energy can actually give you that bravery to kind of bring up some topic within your home environment or within your family that maybe has been unspoken or you had to be actually kind of like working through. Remember that the Mercury Saturn conjunction is actually happening in your 12th house. So it looks like that some of the ways of self-sabotage, for example, needs to be said out loud, needs to be kind of like put into words. And maybe you had kind of like quite a few disputes going on within your family environment or people that you live together with. And then hopefully this Mars is going to help you to kind of move forward with those certain type of a progress that we can make in those family connections. But also I would like to mention that the fourth house is connected to emotional security. So you had to be really going back to your foundation and look at, you know, what needs to be gone in your life in a way. It's a little bit of a spring clean there to be able to find emotional stability in your life. So hopefully you did some digging in connection to unresolved family problems, or maybe you kind of like reassess your living conditions and then now you're ready to make a decision about that in the next 3 months. I would also say that maybe with that Mars, you know, projecting your anger onto others, there is an opposition to Pluto, which could actually indicate that you have been kind of like struggling to create a work and life balance. So definitely it is an indication that you're going to have to be determined, you're going to have the willpower, and even you're going to have to practice a bit of patience as well. Okay, let's have a look at Cancer rising sign. So the retrogression started in your second house. And then, why am I talking about Cancer rising sign? Sorry, I wanted to talk about Taurus rising sign. Sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Okay, so sorry about that. So Taurus rising sign, the retrogression started in your fourth house and it's going back into your third house. So that's where Mars is going to be going direct. So you were meant to be looking at a little bit your home life, your family life. You had to be looking at your emotional security system a little bit. Maybe you had certain type of tension going on within the family, something that was unspoken. Maybe there were quite a lot of kind of like struggles or dispute going on. And then you had to find courage to let them know, to talk about your feelings, to talk about something that actually is hurtful. So it's the expression of your frustration. And surely this would also talk to us about maybe you had to be learning a little bit more about the origin of your own family, where I come from, what I kind of inherited from them. And maybe there have been some miscommunication or conflicts that took place. And then now we kind of like ready to move away from that or move on from it. And with that Saturn and Mercury conjunction in your 11th house, actually could represent that you are ready to forgive, for example. And maybe you're going to have someone like a mediator, like a friend of yours that you can actually talk to. They give you a great piece of advice. With that Mars retrograde, it's also possible that you might have experienced certain type of like delays connected to travel plans or with your studies, or you were not able to kind of catch up with all the material that you get at school and so forth. And then now you're gonna have a little bit more motivation. So you're gonna be able to catch up on those. So you're gonna be learning probably, and you're gonna be learning faster. Saturn and Mercury conjunction pretty much would talk to you about having to have that kind of like logical mindset. And then sometimes you're just going to have to feel the information, whether it's the right for me or not. Okay, let's move on to Gemini rising sign. So for you, Gemini, the retrogression started in the third house and then it went into the second house. And the majority of the time Mars spent was in your second house or is still in the second house. That's when it goes direct. So some of the topics that might have popped up for you is that with the third house, you had to be looking at your own skill sets. You had to be learning about something in order for you to be able to make more money. So potentially you might have studied something new in the last, let's say, 5 months or even a little bit longer. And then now you are ready to make like a living out of it. And maybe there have been a lot of financial frustration going on, or you have been waiting to get a pay rise, or you have been waiting to get somehow extra money as well. Maybe you didn't actually have the confidence in your skill sets, in things that you learned. But now this Mars might be telling you that, you know what, I have no other option. Actually, I'm not too bad. So let me go for it. Let me go towards it. Yes, maybe you had to be looking at how you earn money, how you spend money as well. And also, you might have had to reflect on your self-worth. And if you did so, then this would promise that it's going to start getting better for you a little bit. So yes, we are happy about it. Maybe you were a little bit more on the cautious side with your investments, or maybe you had some very kind of like impulsive spending, kind of like spree going on here. And then Mars in that case might be telling you now, okay, you know what, let's focus on making money. Let's slow down with that a little bit. If you have been holding on to money, then this Mars is actually might be pushing you to get out of your comfort zone and spend a little bit more, invest. Now, we do have got the Saturn Mercury conjunction as the tightest aspect. Going in your 10th house, which is the house of career. So surely it looks like many of you were focusing on finding a new job or creating a business or trying to kind of like write a CV. And maybe you haven't been able to get a new job just yet, but this Mars retrograde might, direct might be helping you actually to get what you want. Cancer rising sign. So we've got the Mars retrograde actually started in your second house and then it's finishing in your first house. And Mars is going to be in your first house for another 3 months. So on one hand, this was bringing up the topics of money, values, as well as your self-worth. It really feels like that this Mars retrograde wanted you to believe in yourself, wanted you to even to put yourself out there, like to look more courageous, to be more brave, and so forth. And maybe you had financial frustration going on, or maybe there were certain type of delays that might have happened, for example, in achieving any of your financial goals. But then now this Mars direct should be giving you the strength to actually chase that source of money, or to go after your goals, or to go after an opportunity. Maybe you have been actually provided a chance to go for an opportunity, but you were a little bit kind of like scared about it. So now Mars is actually giving you the courage to go for it. Why the opportunity is because we've got the Saturn Mercury conjunction, the tightest aspect to Mars in your ninth house, the house of opportunities. And yes, surely, probably you were focusing on your budgets, you were focusing on your spending habits. Maybe it was a little bit on the tighter side as well, unfortunately. Maybe you had to be reevaluating what I'm spending money on. Maybe you had to be spending quite a lot of money, not only on yourself, but on your physical body, on your health, or even on your family as well. So this Mars might be telling you that it's time to actually spend a little bit more on me. Leo rising sign. So we had the Mars retrograde starting in your second house, but it's finishing in your 12th house. And Mars will be in your 12th house for another 3 months. So because it started in your first house, which is the house of self-development, your drive, your energy level, but also something to do with kind of like your identity badge, how you introduce yourself. So there was a reminder for you that you have to look like an athlete. You have to look like confident and courageous and brave as much as possible. But Mars going back into your 12th house, you might have had your doubts. You might have had kind of like a grieving period going on. So you might have lost a bit of a confidence. You might have had to rediscover certain type of things in your subconscious, which is holding you back from shining from shining the best version of yourself. So you went through this very deep introspection connected to who I am, what the path I want to be on, and how to gain more strength so that I can assert myself later on. You might have had a lot of questions about what my goals are and so on. You might have wanted to kind of work through some of your subconscious fears or even inherited problems, which of course originates from family. Why is that? Because we've got Saturn and Mercury conjunction happening in your eighth house, and that could really talk to you about giving a name to my fears, kind of like becoming crystal clear about what is the actual issue in my subconscious. So it really feels like that you had to have a more like spiritual approach to some of your self-esteem issues. And I would say that maybe you didn't have the strength to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Maybe you didn't have kind of like the stamina to go after like a personal growth. But now this Mars going direct might be helping you to get back on track with habits, because this even could talk to you about that your health, your vitality dropped slightly bit, and then you were not in the mood of going to the gym and so on, or to kind of take care of yourself. So it looks like you're gonna start focusing a little bit more on self-care in the next few months. Virgo rising sign. So we have got Mars retrograde, which started in your 12th house, but it pretty much ended up in your 11th house. And the 12th house is a lot of healing. So it looks like that you had to be healing some of your friendships, or you had to be figuring out what your long-term goals are. And there is a lot of strength within you. It just was somehow buried. And maybe you needed a mentor, an advisor, a friend of yours who had to be awakening that inner power within you. And maybe you wanted to kind of just run away to escape from any type of mundane responsibilities, and hopefully your friends didn't give up on you. And then now they are ready to bring that life back into you. But maybe you had quite a lot of unresolved emotions to deal with, and then you could do that through therapies, through friendships, or meeting new people. Yes, this could really talk to you about that there have been kind of like a crisis situation going on in certain type of communities that you are part of or in your social circle, and maybe this Mars retrograde is going to help you iron those out. Maybe it could have felt like that I keep running into certain type of issues when it comes to my long-term goals and achieving things, but now maybe you've got the strength to actually conquer that. Maybe also with the Saturn Mercury conjunction in your seventh house, which is actually in trine to Mars stationary direct, maybe you just had to be kind of like having a one-to-one conversation with a friend of yours, with a mentor who is actually naming some of your problems to you. And then you were actually contemplating on it, kind of like digesting it, and then moving. And then now you are ready to move on. Maybe you have been questioning somehow what my role is within a relationship or within the society. So I would say that you had to be focusing a little bit on reevaluating goals, your goals, and maybe even making changes around them. Libra rising signs. So the retrograde started in your 11th house and then it went back into your 10th house. Now, the 11th house is long-term goals and pay rise, and the 10th house is very much about reputation, ambition, and how you want to come across in the public. So it looks like that you might have started, for example, an online business. You might have started a new job, but there have been frustrations around it. Maybe it didn't pick up as quickly as you wanted to. Maybe you kind of lost the motivation as well. Like, oh, no one is walking into my new coffee shop, for example. So what am I going to do now? Am I going to close down the business because I'm not making enough money out of it, and all those type of stuff. And then hopefully this Mars is going to be able to help you to actually get this move forward. And maybe we're going to start seeing that the sales is actually starting to pick up for you. But also because the retrograde started in your 11th, maybe you had some issues in your social circle, maybe some arguments with the friends, maybe it's actually work related kind of like arguments, working together with your friends or even with colleagues, and we did not see eye to eye. So that's actually a possibility as well. Maybe you didn't feel that you get appreciated at work, or you get appreciated by your work colleagues. Maybe you didn't get the pay rise that you wanted to. It looks like work has been pretty much of a big topic for you, because this Mars retrograde is actually having a trine from Saturn Mercury in your sixth house, which actually could talk to you about that. Okay, I'm ready to actually have a chit chat with my boss about my performance, to fix the working environment, to fix some of these tensions that have been going on at work. So let's just iron it out. Saturn says, you know what, approach it from a very professional point of view, because you can go really far with it. It's kind of like taming a little bit of the Mars anger issues. And obviously, Mars being stationary is also kind of like tempering that big time. So I would say that you had to be focusing on your work connections, and you had to be kind of like building a supportive system at work. Maybe it's because you have been becoming a leader, and then it was just a bit more on the challenging side. Scorpio rising sign. So the retrogression started in your 10th house, and then it went into your ninth. So it really feels like that maybe you had new work opportunities that might have come up. Maybe you didn't take them, and then now you're regretting it, and maybe you are considering, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And maybe there have been quite a lot of challenges at work, maybe power struggles, maybe you didn't get time off when you wanted to. It would have felt like that there is no work and life balance in my life. So kind of like a lot of struggle, or you would have wanted to move forward in your career, but no one really kind of picked up on your efforts. And then maybe an opportunity came around to kind of go for this new position, or maybe it is related to a work training matter, and then you kind of decided that I'm going to go for it. And maybe this Mars going stationary direct is actually the start of that learning curve, so that later on, actually, you can go for a better job. And also, it could indicate that you were not recognized, you were not kind of like appreciated somehow. So you decided that I am going to go somewhere else where the appreciation is kind of like guaranteed. And maybe the appreciation is not coming as quickly as you would like to, because Mars is stationary and it's going to remain in the sign of Cancer for another 3 months. But after April, it might be coming to you. So it really feels like that you still have to work with realigning a little bit more with your career goals. You're going to have to kind of learn a little bit more about it. And because we've got the Saturn and Mercury conjunction in your fifth house, most likely you're going to have to name what your heart desire is, what the ideal work environment is for me, and then kind of like maybe studying about it. And then later on, actually, we can start doing that. Sagittarius rising sign. So the retrogression started in your ninth house, and it went back into your eighth house. So the ninth house is very much about travel, education, and also something to do with your belief system. So maybe you had a little bit of a doubt about whether you want to be making investments, for example, and potentially it's an investment into a home environment, because the Saturn Mercury conjunction is in your fourth house. And then this Mars direct is actually giving you the kind of like the courage, you know what, let me just kind of jump into it. Pisces energy often has got a lot of doubts. So what it feels like is that Mars is kind of like trying to cut those doubts out and asking you to take a risk. But also with the ninth house, maybe you had some travel plans, maybe you had some relocation plans, and then you were kind of unsure about it. You did your little research why Mars was in the sign of, or it is in the sign of Cancer. You had your doubts, there were some red flags, but now this Mars might be telling you that, you know what, we only live once, so let's go for it. So now you might become a little bit more restless about making these changes in your life. And I also feel like that this is a message for you, that you are meant to be looking at what truly inspire you. Explore your opportunities, explore in a way your whether you have got a positive mindset or a negative mindset. Maybe you had to be looking at how judgmental you are towards things, re-examining those. And maybe some of your consideration, let's say, towards a travel plan or purchase a house and so forth, was certain type of financial burdens, obligations, or even mortgage, debt, and so forth. And also maybe you were working on creating a better emotional connection with parents. But in order for you to connect with them better, or with people that you live together with, it looks like that you're going to have to be able to name Saturn, Mercury in your fourth house exactly what your feelings are towards them. There's a lot of transformation going on for you. There is a lot of kind of like pretty much it feels like that you want to start fresh. You want a new life. Capricorn rising sign. So the retrogression started in your eighth house and it went back into your seventh house. So it really kind of feels like that you had to be looking at the intimacy of your relationship. You had to be looking at how much money the partner makes, how much money I make, how much we actually contribute, what type of secrets the partner has, and what type of changes the partner might have gone through in the last 7 months. And because it started in your eighth house, so there was a huge focus on finances as well as the psychological complexes. So potentially maybe you have been single and then you had to be doing a bit of a digging up and the research about why I am single. Where does this issue originate from? What type of family patterns kind of like I inherited that is stopping me from connecting with others. So yeah, some of you might have decided to get divorced, for example, just letting go of a relationship because we keep going on in the same circles. And yeah, this could have brought up a lot of traumatic experiences that we might have ended up having conflicts about, frustration connected to your partner, frustration about their spending habits or how much money they make. And maybe this Mars is giving you the courage to now move forward. Aquarius rising sign. So the retrogression started in your seventh, ended up in the sixth, and that's when Mars is going to go direct now. So the seventh house is about relationship, business partnership, but also equality, balance. So it looks like that you had to be balancing out your lifestyle. Maybe you had to be balancing out something to do with how much you work, how much you help others, how much you eat, and all those type of stuff. Or maybe you wanted to just create a healthier relationship. And the retrogression might have started with kind of like an analytical approach to your relationship, maybe a lot of arguments as well. And then once it has gone back into the sign of Cancer in your sixth house, you did a lot of reflection on, you know, about how I contributed towards these issues, what certain habits I've got, maybe I'm quite controlling and so forth. And yeah, so basically you had to be looking into the mirror as well. But also this could indicate that there have been competitions going on, for example, at work, maybe some type of unresolved issues, or even at work, there have been issues that needed to be resolved, finding like a solution to them. And then you might not have been able to fully fix something, but this Mars going direct is actually kind of like promising to you that, you know what, the solution is about to come potentially in the next 3 months. And maybe also you might have felt like that your co-workers or bosses did not treat you fairly. So surely there is a lot of financial consideration going on for you because we've got the Saturn Mercury conjunction also in your second house. So this could indicate that, let's say, unfair treatment connected to pay rises, or how much money we make, or how much money, you know, I put into the rent and how much money my partner puts into the rent. So something to do with the habits that might have been pretty much of an issue, but also you might have been considering signing a contractual agreement with a new company. And then Mars tells you that now you are going to be able to find one. And last but not least, we've got Pisces rising sign. So the retrogression started in your sixth house and then it's ending in the fifth house, but Mars will remain in Cancer for another 3 months. So it did bring up the topic of health and routines and even work, your working style, especially if you're kind of like in the service industry. So let's start with that health element. It might have, you might have been a little bit sloppy and then you started eating a little bit more. You didn't have the strength to go to the gym. You might have gone, but you just did that with half fling type of stuff. And then this Mars going direct might be giving you the strength, the determination. You know what? Yeah, I put on 5 kilos. Now I'm ready to shred that. And the same applies to your work situation as well. There could have been a lot of frustration going on in your daily life, in your work life as well. Maybe a lot of arguments with coworkers or even your clients could have frustrated you somehow. And then this Mars retrograde wanted you to reflect on that. If you did the reflection, then it looks like it's going to get a lot better for you. And maybe also with the sixth house, a lot of time management. So maybe one struggle could have been for you that I'm trying to kind of balance out, how many hours I work and then how many hours, I don't know, I walk my dogs and then how many hours, I kind of like spend in the gym. And it might have felt like it's getting too much. So obviously, because the retrograde ended in your fifth house, which is the house of passion and creativity, so it could feel like that, hold on a minute, I am working all the time and I have no time for something that I'm truly passionate about. So maybe this Mars is going to give you the solution and then you are able to actually find a bit of a time for something that really pulls your heartstring. Okay, so guys, this is my forecast on Mars retrograde. I hope it really helps everyone. And I will see you very soon because I'm going to be preparing exactly the same video connected to Venus retrogression as well. So you might want to sign up to my channel if you don't want to miss my upcoming videos. Also this week, I'm going to be posting a video about the upcoming lunation, also broken down for the 12 signs. See you soon. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.